Hey guys, welcome back to the third episode of the Growth Marriage podcast. There's so many podcasts in this feed, but it's just recently that we rebranded to Growth Marriage and moved away from the Levumentary. And if you haven't listened to the first two episodes, I highly recommend you go back and listen to them. In the first episode, we introduced a concept called the growth ecosystem. And then in the second episode, we talk about the first piece of we'll call it a pyramid, the growth ecosystem pyramid. And it was having an ideal to strive for. And today, I want to talk to you about the second aspect or the second piece of the growth marriage formula. I'm here with Laura, by the way, again.
I'm here. I'm here too. Yeah.
Licensed marriage and family therapist and all-around great gal.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. So the thing I wanted to talk about today is we were talking about the ecosystem that a plant needs to grow. And if you put a seed in rich, fertile soil, and you water it regularly, and you put it in the sunlight, it has no choice but to grow. And that as I have studied all these couples and done all these interviews, we realized that there's actually an ecosystem that helps people grow. Like if you put them in the right ecosystem, they don't have to white-knuckle it and grit their teeth and just try with all their might to change and use sheer will and determination. Most of the time when people try and change, that's the tactic that they use, and then they burn out and they fall to pieces and they can't maintain their goals over the long term. But if you put somebody in the ideal ecosystem, the change comes naturally and you don't even have to do the gritting your teeth and the white knuckling stuff. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Great. I'm glad that you got my back here. So today, what I wanted to talk about in this ecosystem is what I would refer to as the soil. So plants use soil for a couple of things. One, their roots grow deep into the soil so that when a storm comes and the wind blows and the rain starts pounding down, the plant doesn't get washed away. Like it kind of keeps it rooted and grounded in one specific place. And the other thing that's really cool about soil is there's nutrients in the soil that the plant can absorb through its roots. And to me, the analogy applies to human beings as well. Human beings need something very specific to keep us grounded and rooted, and it's a strong community. And to me, I don't know if you're familiar with the Jim Rohn quote, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. A lot of people have heard that quote before.
Yep.
But I'm a firm believer that your marriage is the average of the 5 couples you spend the most time with. If the friends that you spend the most time with, if their marriage or their attitude towards relationships and marriage was as contagious as the chicken pox, what would they be infecting you with? What would they be infecting you with, enthusiasm and kindness and love and service and compassion? Or would they be more jaded, resentful, angry, complaining, annoyed? Those are qualities that people exhibit. And if you're spending time around either one of those groups of people, you're more likely to have that attitude towards your relationship. And I think that draws the parallel also to the nutrient aspect, that just like how a plant absorbs nutrients in the soil, people absorb the values of the other people of their community, the people they spend the most time with. So in your experience as a therapist, how important would you say community is to people having a strong marriage?
Well, I mean, it's actually kind of interesting because there is a statistic that shows that when you have people in your life who have divorced, and it could be like a second relationship to you, you are then more likely to divorce if someone in your community has divorced. And that part kind of blows my mind. And the same is true, like if you were to have people in your life who, let's say, are morbidly obese, you are much more likely to also be more morbidly obese. And so it is sort of like an infection, good or bad, that you might unconsciously be absorbing the energy that these people in your relationship are putting out. And it's funny, I just had this conversation with a friend of mine. So you might not know this, Nate, you know this, but I just recently moved from Salt Lake to Bend, Oregon. And being in Bend for 2 months, my main priority, the same as when I moved to Salt Lake, was to establish a friendship network. And it's neat because I get to be really intentional, and I get to be incredibly forward thinking in the types of friends. And I almost think of it a little bit like an interview, in that, hey, you seem interesting, we have some common interests, why don't we get together as a couple and go out and do a double date? And it's like an interview. I'm interviewing these people to see if they're going to be a good fit for my husband and myself. And a lot of it is, are you positive? Do you bicker with your partner? I mean, I get a really good sense of who you are as a human being when I'm out with you. And are you going to be lifting me up in my relationship? A phrase that I like to use is, are the people in your circle, are they friends of the marriage or not? And friends of the marriage are going to be people that, you know, they're going to respect your boundaries. They're going to respect your wishes, your goals as a relationship. So Nate, if you have a friend of the marriage and you're out with your buddy and you're working out with him, and you start talking about stuff that you and Ange are going through, and you're complaining about your wife, he might stop you and say, well, Nate, have you considered this? And might point the finger back at you and say,
Yeah.
have you thought a little bit about maybe your attitude towards your wife, or the things
Laura,
you, yes?
this happens to me.
I know. I know it does, because you shared with me
Yeah.
how your workout buddy is a friend of the marriage, and you hold
Yeah.
each other accountable. And
I can't tell you how many times he's been like, dude, you're kind of being the one who's the dick right now.
Yeah, you're
like,
being a little bit of an ass. You need to step back. So that would tell me that you have chosen very wisely about the person that you're choosing. And not only that, but he's probably the first person that you're spending time with first thing in the morning, and the energy that you are choosing to put into your life. And you're holding one another accountable as far as your health and your well-being, but also the health of your marriage. And these are the types of people that we want in our life, that are going to be friends of the marriage. And I think it's perfectly okay for you to go through and do an inventory. When I go out with these people, do I feel better or worse? Do they lift me up? Do they hold me accountable? Do we talk about the positive things in our relationships? Or does it just kind of become like a big bitching session where we bring each other down and we reinforce that perpetual negative energy? And it's okay to sometimes vent, but if you feel like the venting has taken on a really negative turn and you're just sort of perpetuating that negativity rather than just venting and getting it out and then moving forward, maybe it's time to reevaluate the amount of time that you're spending with this person, because they might not be that soil that is going to enrich your relationship.
Totally. I love that. So a couple things. First, for our science nerds out there, Laura mentioned some stuff about how if you have somebody close to you that has gone through a divorce, you're more likely to go through a divorce. I looked it up really quick while you were talking.
I was wondering what you were doing.
Yeah. So it's a Pew Research study that shows that you are 75% more likely to get a divorce if a close friend or family member has been divorced. And if it's a friend of a friend, you're 33% more likely to get a divorce. Mm-hmm. So the people that you spend your time with matter. And it's not just like the action of getting a divorce, it's all the things that lead up to having the divorce that makes that happen. So just like what Laura is saying, if they're the type of people who bag on their partner all the time, who aren't there, they are angry or upset or frustrated or complaining or doing all the negative things. They have a negative mindset towards marriage. Those are the people who their mindset will be contagious. I think if you just look up Pew Research, divorce and contagious, that's what literally they talk about, those behaviors being contagious. It's a psychological term called behavioral contagion. Mm-hmm. And it's the thing that's responsible for, like, if you ever see a celebrity commit suicide and then the suicide rates across the world spike, or if you find out, like, there's a teen girl who gets pregnant in high school and then like 3 other girls the next semester come out and announce that they're pregnant as well. It's like we innately as humans, we do the things that the people around us or the people that we watch the most are doing. Mm-hmm. And that applies to marriage as well. I also want to bring up something that I think is important to talk about that is tangential to what you were talking about. You were talking a lot about assessing the people that you do spend time with. Right. What about people who are trying to go it alone? What about the people out there who don't have any community? They're like, we don't have time to spend time with friends, or like, we just don't have anybody in our life that we really look up to or admire. Our life is basically consumed by our family and we just don't have a community. What would you say to those people?
I mean, that's a really hard part, because we're pack animals. We really are intended to be in community. And it puts a lot of undue stress on your partner if your partner's trying to show up for you in every way.
Yeah.
They're going to be the person that is going to be, your secret keeper. They're going to be your nurturer. They're going to be the person that's also keeping, on task. They're going to be your spouse, but they're also going to be your teacher. I mean, it's just too much to put on the relationship. So I would say it doesn't necessarily matter the number of people you have in your life. It's the quality of relationships that you have. And if you have, let's say, 3 quality relationships outside of your unit
Mhm.
that you can rely on, that maybe it's just an individual, and you don't necessarily know their significant other, but it's a good girlfriend that you see at the gym and you have great conversation with. I would nurture those relationships, especially the ones that you find really lift you up.
Definitely.
I recently saw this article that came across where you can go to the library and you can check out human beings. And I know that sounds funny, but it's a way of creating community in a place where people feel isolated. And isolation, especially among middle-aged men, is one of the number one reasons why men are committing suicide. And
Oh yeah.
there is a need and desire for us to connect. But
Especially middle-aged divorced men.
Exactly. Yeah.
This stuff builds up, builds up, builds up. It destroys a marriage.
Yeah.
And then the woman typically has an emotional support system in place with friends or sisters or a mom or something. But men don't have anybody.
Yeah.
Their only emotional connection has been their wife.
Yeah.
And if that emotional connection has been crappy, then that man has been very, very lonely for a very, very long time. And that is not psychologically healthy.
Yeah. So let's just speak specifically then to men at this moment, because
Okay.
I will tell you that when we moved to a new place, to Bend, Oregon, my number one goal was find community, create community. I took it upon me as the female in this relationship to create community. And I started, even through my kids' preschool, I set up a meeting for all of the dads to go to a local brewery and meet up. And out of, I would say, about 15 men, only 3 showed up.
Wow.
I was absolutely shocked. And maybe that's because I'm assuming they already have community. They don't necessarily need to connect in those ways. And that's what I'm assuming. You're shaking your head no.
I don't think so.
So here's the hard part. What is the barrier? Why are people not reaching out? Why is it this tendency toward isolation? Is it scary?
It's scary.
It's scary. Yeah, to put yourself out there, especially if you're more of an introvert. But I think that in our relationship in particular, I take on the role as the social coordinator. Mm-hmm. And I say, hey, I met this great couple. I think you'd really enjoy them. And then I'm like crossing my fingers that they hit it off. My husband hits it off with the other husband. And maybe we have a special, unique bond with this particular other couple. So I do think it's really important for us to create community with people, to find quality connection, to be really intentional about pouring into those relationships that give back to us as well.
Yeah.
And then also, skimming the fat a little bit, figure out those relationships that aren't pouring into us and serving us with nutrients, and figuring out ways that we can pare those relationships down.
Definitely. So if you want to speak directly to men, can I share some advice just as a guy of things that have helped me?
Absolutely.
One thing is I believe men bond by doing side-by-side activities.
Yeah. Research shows that that's how men communicate more comfortably with one another.
Yeah. It's like you go back to, I don't know, caveman ages, and it's like men would spend time on the hunt next to each other, like crouched behind a rock, watching for the right animal to come by so they could kill it or whatever. Yeah. So finding some guys to go work out with, finding some guys to go hike with, finding some guys to go shoot with. If you're a gun person, you can go shooting. But find some activity that you guys can go out and do together, like getting together just to talk and hang out and grab lunch. Probably not the most ideal activity for dudes.
It's pretty intimate, I would say. That might be something that you do later on once the relationship is developed.
But if you don't have a lot of guy friends, start by finding an activity that you enjoy and go, or that you want to enjoy or that you want to get better at. Yeah. Either find a mentor or find some guys that are at your level that want to improve and go do that thing. Go hit the gym, go fishing, go get outside in nature once a week or twice a month or something like that. But have a regular routine
Mm-hmm.
and do a side-by-side activity. And I think that's where, when you're out doing something and you've got your endorphins pumping, like you said, it can be kind of scary to open up and talk about emotional things, especially for a guy who hasn't been practicing that his entire life. But when you're out moving around and exercising, it releases endorphins, which are painkillers, which makes it a lot easier not only to do physically demanding things, but emotionally demanding things.
Yeah, and it releases your cortisol.
Yep.
Yeah, reduces cortisol, the stress hormone in your body.
So that's
more comfortable for you to talk.
That's where I would say you should start. Get on Meetup, look for gyms in your area, look for activities that are happening, and just show up and see if you can't meet some people. Go to a church if that is helpful, if you're like a believing kind of person. But don't be afraid to speak up and just invite people to do stuff. There's a lot of people out there who really want that.
Yeah. And I did the relationship spider web, and this is how I got to know you, Nate, and you probably remember me saying this, when I was new to Salt Lake, you were the first person that I was told to go and meet. So I met up for lunch with you with my 6-month-old son.
Yep.
And then as part of our conversation, I said, Nate, who are two or three
people? Yep, I remember.
2 or 3 other people that you think I would be a good fit with. And you gave me the names of those people, and I took them out for coffee.
Wasn't it Bea and Kristen?
It was. And then I asked them the same thing. Who do you think would be 2 or 3 other people? And you get on the spider web, because if you find a connection with one person, they're probably a good judge of character.
Yeah.
And the same thing is, quality relationship begets quality relationship. So if you're trimming the fat, you're finding people that are rich soil for you to put your roots down into, they probably have other solid individuals. One
other comment I want to make before we dive off this topic is to the women. And this is specifically about men again, but I've seen a trend when men do have close relationships with each other, where they've built up that ability to trust and talk about things that are hard, and they have kind of like this support system in place. I've seen several women become defensive or upset or even make fun of their husbands for it. I just want to encourage women to be supportive of their husbands when they find another guy who wants to support them in being a good man, and to be an emotional support system and lighten your load as a wife, so that you don't have to be the sole carrier of his emotional burdens and stresses. It's been really, honestly, like heartbreaking for me to see that happen, where a man finally opens up and trusts another man, and then he's kind of made fun of or mocked
for that relationship
by his wife.
Can I ask you on the flip side of that?
Yeah.
Now, I have had this in my own life, where my husband's had relationships with certain men, and I have felt like whatever they're doing, their relationship, it's not uplifting. And just as a scenario, he befriends a man who doesn't have a family, doesn't have a wife. And so his lifestyle's very different from our lifestyle.
More of a party lifestyle.
Yeah, and doesn't necessarily have or share the same. It's like the idea of a friend of the relationship. Doesn't necessarily have the same ideals as what we have as a couple. And there have been times where I haven't been feeling so good about my husband's individual relationships based on how they are leading back into our relationship. And I could probably say vice versa, of him thinking, this woman over here, all she does is, put me down, or you guys end up talking and the conversation goes toward mostly just complaining.
Yeah.
What do you do if you don't feel comfortable with your significant other's relationship with someone else?
Yeah, it's time to have a hard conversation.
Yeah, that is a tough one. Is it okay to ask that your partner not spend as much time with that person if you feel like it's not that rich soil for your relationship? I
don't think it's smart to make demands in your relationship.
Okay.
But what I do think is smart is to have an open, honest conversation and let your partner know what impact you're seeing as a result of certain actions. So say, hey, I got something I want to talk to you about. This is something that I've noticed, and maybe I'm wrong here, but the story I'm telling myself, and we use this phrase a lot, the story I'm telling myself is that when you go spend time with Derek, or whatever the guy's name is, you come home and you're not as invested in the relationship. It seems like you you kind of go back to a version of you that was, back into college days. You seem a little bit more dismissive of me and of our kids. And
our common goals.
Yeah. I just don't, I'm getting the vibe that it's not bringing out the best in you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like he brings out the best in you? Can you tell me what you're getting out of spending time with him that makes you feel like the best version of yourself? It's a
hard conversation.
Yeah. It's a really hard conversation, but like set it up and give him an opportunity to be, or her, an opportunity to be honest about where they're at, why they spend time with them. Get curious, get into that curious mindset. And then if when it all boils down to it, just say, can I be brutally honest? And say, when you spend time with that person, I don't think it does good things for our relationship. And it makes me concerned. Mm-hmm. And I really love you, and I want our marriage to be as amazing as it can be. And I don't want to tell you what to do. And also, I don't communicate things that worry me very often, and this is one of the things that worries me. Mm-hmm. So I just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, this would definitely go back to, and why it's so important to go back and listen to episode 2 if you haven't already, about this idea of where are you headed.
Yep.
Because if both of you have agreed upon the end goal in mind and you're moving the needle every single day, you can say, this doesn't seem to be moving us any closer toward our end goal. And if both of you are bought in, it's not just, hey, wife over here with an idea of a vision of a marriage that I want, and therefore your actions and your relationships are not serving my purpose. Instead, it's both of you have agreed, both of you have this vision, and he can take some responsibility and say, you know what, you're right. I can absolutely see how this is not serving our goal in mind. And this is not, the soil that I need to sink my roots into.
Love it. Boom. Yeah. Bringing it full circle.
Thank you. Yeah.
That is why this ecosystem works so well.
Absolutely.
If you can agree on that ideal to strive for, and then find a community to surround yourself with that will support you in achieving that ideal, you're putting yourself in a beautiful, beautiful place.
One thing that I like is gather your people together and create community around, because you might have, let's say, 1 or 2, and I know you've done this, Nate, you have had date nights where you do all the double dates with all of the relationships around you that are your community, and you get everybody together. So you might have like 5 couples, and it's fun to be able to see the energy, and it's very uplifting and it's motivating, and you get to see the way other people around you interact. Maybe they have a little PDA. Ooh, I like that. I might want a little more PDA with my partner. And I think it's cool to create that even bigger community rather than just having these one-off relationships. We just recently, I have this one couple, and it's that couple that you can spend endless time with and feel like it's not a chore. It's a pleasure to be around them. It's fun to see them interact. It's interesting to see how they manage conflict. And we had this conversation. We said, this is very rare to be able to spend this much time with one other couple and just purely feel like it's easy, it's fun, and it's lifting you up. And so we did an experiment. We said, let's go on vacation with 2 other couples. And it was very cool to be able to see the dynamic of 4 couples where we all feel like we're really supporting one another. And it went really well. It was really cool to be able to see how that worked out.
Love it.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. Cultivate your community.
Absolutely. And be intentional about it.
Be intentional. We'll talk about that quote later. I think we've gone long enough on this topic. So the second part of the growth ecosystem formula is have a community that supports you, that grounds you, that will keep you stable when those storms come along. They'll help you through them instead of uprooting you. Yeah. And they'll help you be the best version of yourself. So if you don't have that, once again, I'm going to do a little teaser. We've got something coming up in January, and we have literally cultivated an opportunity for wives only. I'm going to say that.
No.
We'll do something for husbands later on, but this is for wives only who are interested in ending the white-knuckling, gritting your teeth. I'm going to try and force things to be better, and using this growth ecosystem, having a community, which we will help you cultivate, having an ideal to strive for, which we will help you create, and then this third aspect that we'll cover in the next podcast that you should definitely tune into. We're going to bring all of those three elements together and give you the perfect opportunity to make January the best month of your marriage ever. So stay tuned. We'll tell you more about that in upcoming episodes.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Before you go, I just wanted to tell you one really quick thing. If you enjoyed hearing Laura and I talk together, you will be excited about this new project that she and I are collaborating on. It's called the Epic Wives Experiment, and it launches the very beginning of January 2020, and we're really, really excited about it. Our goal is to send women through a series of experiments that will get them more of what they want out of their marriage by doing less. If you're a wife and you're curious about learning more, go to epicwivesexperiment.com, type in your name and email address, and we will send you details as soon as we're ready to release them. But right now, it's all top secret.